And there has been some pushback, like the likes of Alibaba, as I talked about in the story. When the Chinese, corporate China, some of these AI companies push back on this idea, okay, we need advanced chips here, and the Chinese government seems to be pushing back and really trying to bolster self-sufficiency. What do you make of this Trump administration's decision to allow back into the Chinese market H200 AI chips right now?
Well, I think the big question is going to be, first, how many chips the Trump administration allows to be sold to China, and then second, how many the Chinese government allow to be purchased by Chinese companies. We've heard confirmation from both Beijing and Washington that some H20s will be sold, but the U.S. is talking about security checks, talking about limiting the types of customers that can buy these chips, and the Chinese government has signaled that it still wants its companies to buy domestic chips too. So I'm going to be watching very closely on the volume of chips that actually get shipped, because that'll be a key data point that helps us understand how impactful this will be for Chinese AI companies.
And I would imagine the Chinese companies who want NVIDIA chips, they are so used to NVIDIA's hardware. They've built their systems around NVIDIA's ecosystem, so they find that switch to Huawei's and Cambricon's a little bit more difficult at this point. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I think that's certainly right. The NVIDIA ecosystem around CUDA is substantially more developed than its competitors around Huawei, for example, or other Chinese firms. And that's meant that it's been much harder to train and deploy models on non-NVIDIA chips, which is one of the key reasons why Chinese firms still want to keep whatever access they can get to NVIDIA hardware. The second reason is that Chinese firms can't produce enough to meet demand in China, because they're not allowed to produce their chips outside of China, in Taiwan, for example, and domestic manufacturing for advanced chips is just limited in terms of its capacity in China. So even if the chips are okay, the volumes are small relative to what China's demand for AI actually requires.
In the meantime, we were talking about that DeepSeek story, reports suggesting that DeepSeek has been smuggling Blackwell chips for its upcoming model. Any intel, Chris, on how the smuggling of chips in 2025 is looking a little bit different from previous years because of so much chatter around this, so much revelation around the significance of these NVIDIA chips at the moment?
Well, I think it's clear smuggling is happening at a pretty substantial volume. Every week we get a new data point or an anecdote of smuggling happening. But I also think it's worth looking at the latest model that DeepSeek released just at the start of this month, which explicitly highlighted that they were struggling to acquire all of the computing power they needed to pre-train their model at the level they were hoping to. So in other words, even if they're smuggling, they're not smuggling at this scale that's necessary to reach the cutting edge. And I think that speaks to the challenges of smuggling as a strategy. You can smuggle here and there, but smuggling multiple data centers worth of chips is just really hard to do, and you can't fix things when they break. You can't get the spare parts that you might need. And so I don't think smuggling is a viable strategy for a country the size of China.
Mandy jumping in here. Hi there, Chris. What would you say to the Republican lawmakers that we just heard from a moment ago who are voicing their concerns about allowing the sale of the H200 chips to China? Essentially what they're saying is they're concerned that it might undermine US dominance in AI.
Well, I think that's a reasonable argument to make. It's certainly the case that China's been constrained in the amount of computing power it's been able to access over the last couple of years, in large part because of US restrictions on the sale of chips. And it's certainly as clear as it's ever been that if you want to build advanced AI models, you need access to advanced compute. I think of AI as having three key inputs: computing power, brain power, and electrical power. And China's the weakest when it comes to computing power, precisely because companies like NVIDIA and AMD have unique capabilities to manufacture chips at scale that Chinese firms today can't match.